Welcome back to your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Gold, and I'm joined today by Michael J. Facci. And Facci, my man, how are we doing?
We're doing good. We're doing good. Free agency, it has not died out, but it's dying down a little bit. And I think the moves are still happening, though. There's a couple moves that have occurred since the last time we've been able to talk about them. So I think this one's going to be a fun episode today.
Yeah, so on today's episode, we're going to just kind of look at some of the moves made this offseason, whether it's been trades, whether it's been signings, and just discuss how this impacts the Pacers. I think that's a very interesting thing to look at. Now, I don't want to say exactly the Pacers will be like, oh, this affects them standing wise, but what these moves can mean for the Pacers moving forward, because there's a lot of things you can look at here for what teams have done or what they haven't done. And I think that that's really good to talk about here. But let's talk about some of the teams we haven't talked about and the moves they've made. The big one that happened over the weekend, DeMar DeRozan gets traded in a sign and trade deal from the Chicago Bulls to the Sacramento Kings. Harrison Barnes goes to San Antonio in this deal. Chris Duarte, former Pacer, was traded to Sacramento last year. He gets dealt to Chicago. And DeMar DeRozan now in that starting lineup with De'Aaron Fox, with Keegan Murray, with Domantas Sabonis. Your thoughts on the DeRozan fit?
I think the Kings absolutely had to make a move. I think you saw that the success that they had 2 seasons ago, it kind of went stale, and they needed something a little bit extra. After bringing Malik Monk back, it felt like that wasn't enough. Going after a guy like DeMar DeRozan, I think instantly makes the Kings a better team. I think you look at their big three of Fox, DeRozan, and Sabonis. It's good. It's not the elite big three of the league, but I think that that's a move that didn't cost them much. I mean, Harrison Barnes, someone that felt like they kind of had a little bit of buyer's remorse that they brought him back, and then it just I don't know. I think the writing was on the wall that his better years were probably behind him, and I think being able to get a guy like DeMar DeRozan, who has been one of the best players in clutch time, to pair him with De'Aaron Fox, who's also been one of the better clutch players in the league. I think that's going to be a really fun move for Sacramento that assures that they have every right to be not only just a playoff team, but competing in the West.
Yeah, the only thing I don't like about this deal is the spacing. And I
True.
kind of made a joke about it on Twitter under
Love
one
to
of the
do it.
comments section. I put a 3-point line and I just said, I'm worried about this because Sabonis is not a great 3-point shooter, neither is DeRozan. And, De'Aaron Fox has gotten much better as a 3-point shooter. I think
But
Kevin
yeah,
Herter kind of had a bit of a regression last year. Keegan Murray's still a work in progress. So, uh, you know, uh, Malik Monk, they brought him back. Think he's a great player off the bench. Everybody keeps putting him in the starting lineup. He's not going to start. I don't understand why anybody's saying that. He's coming off the bench. Kevin Herter should be starting at this point, spread the floor. But I like the move, like you said, because they had to do something. I think that DeMar DeRozan is one of those guys that people kind of overlook no matter what team he's on. Doesn't ever really seem to be a headache, whatever team he's on, just plays hard. And I think they're going to figure it out. I think Mike Brown is a good coach for this team. I like the fact that they went after a veteran guy because I feel like they were kind of missing a veteran piece.
they were.
Harrison Barnes was a veteran, but he just can't do the same thing that DeMar DeRozan can do. Maybe he's a better catch and shoot 3-point shooter, but he's not a better isolation scorer. And we saw how DeRozan, when he's going, can really take over games. So I think just having another option like that makes a lot of sense. I don't know if he'll be at the peak of his game throughout this 3-year, $74 million contract that he signed, according to Woj, but I do think that it's one of those things where you just kind of do it year by year, figure things out. Uh, he's from California, so it makes a lot of sense for him to want to go back home. Didn't want to go to the Lakers, apparently. I don't know how much the Clippers were willing to offer to get him in a deal as well. So it seems like Sacramento was a team that was willing to pay the most, obviously. They were willing to give up a starter in Harrison Barnes to make it happen. Think it's a good fit. Don't think it's a great fit. I don't think it really moves the needle in terms of making Sacramento a play-in team all the way to a top 4 seed. But I think at the trade deadline, you might be hearing Kings fans not loving this move as much as maybe they thought they had. Loved it in the offseason, but I think it's a good player to add to your roster. And, it's an upgrade over Barnes, but it's not that much of an upgrade.
I think if they didn't make like a bigger move, they were staring at being a playing team again. I think the West has so many good teams that like Sacramento was feeling that pressure of like this is a franchise that didn't make the playoffs for 16 years. They finally made the playoffs. They got bounced. Or whatever it was. They didn't have success, early on, and it just felt like last year was that regression. Look at DeMar DeRozan. I think some of the best years he's had, the last few years, a lot of people haven't been paying attention to. The
Yeah.
Bulls haven't been winning. The Spurs weren't winning. It's just a kind of kind of got slept on a bit. This is a guy who can give. He's been giving you 20 points per game for over a decade now. It's actually 11 straight years. I think the players that he's in the list of was like LeBron, Kevin Durant, and there was like one other elite player in that list. So I think he is slept on, but yeah, he does have his flaws. But 3 years, $74 million, I think it's a good value. I really do, because I know they're totally different players. But someone said Paul George, that was like $210 million or whatever it was. DeMar DeRozan, $74 million. You could start to be like, is Paul George 3 times the player at this age? No, I don't think so. So for the Kings, I think it's something that didn't cost them an arm and a leg. They were able to move on from Harrison Barnes. They did give up a 2031 unprotected pick swap to the Spurs. That could be costly. 7 years from now, we'll see what happens. But that's it's going to take a long time to determine how costly that was. But for the Kings, I think they felt desperation to have to make a move. This was the biggest move that they could make.
Yeah, thankfully Indiana's not in that spot where they don't have to feel desperate to make a move, right? They feel pretty good about where they're at right now. And it's clear that Chicago is going into rebuild mode. We already kind of saw that was going to be happening when they traded Caruso, and they got Josh Giddey back, who's a young player. They get at Chris Duarte from that. No, that was the same draft, I believe, actually. Chris Duarte, Josh Giddey. So they're collecting people from the 2021 draft, like the Pacers are collecting guys from the 2020 draft. But yeah, I think that Chris Duarte going to Chicago kind of makes you wonder, okay, when's the Levine trade going to happen? When is the Booch trade going to happen? It makes Chicago worse, and I think that impacts Indiana, knowing that they have to play Chicago 4 times a year now. So
Yes.
no DeRozan makes that a little bit easier for Indiana to rack up some wins when they got 3 losses last year against Chicago.
Real quick on that, the incentive for Chicago to be bad is they owe a top 10 protected first-round pick to the San Antonio Spurs. So if you're the Bulls, you want to fall in that top 10. You want to be a team that is hitting that reset button. But think about this. The Bulls held on to DeRozan for way too long. They didn't even get the pick swap in this deal. That's going to San Antonio.
Yeah, just take the money.
It's like it's just crazy how they held on to Drummond for too long. They definitely could have got a couple second-round picks for Drummond at the deadline. Held on to Alex Caruso. I mean, look, I guess they wanted Josh Giddey instead, but you could have got more draft capital if that's what you wanted. Whatever, that could be argued. Not trading DeMar DeRozan last year, there is no argument for that. They messed up. I don't know how they let all these players walk and not get 1 first-round pick in the process. Very poor management job by the Chicago Bulls.
And then nobody wants to trade for Zach LaVine. Let's just be honest.
Nobody. I mean, they have been so desperate around the league trying to shop him that I feel like almost like the league's working together just to be like, we're going to watch you suffer. No one trade for Zach LaVine. I don't even think Zach LaVine wants to be a Bull anymore, knowing how much he's been shopped. I just think it's a bad relationship right now. His value has never been lower.
Yeah, if I was Brooklyn, I would be. If I was Chicago, I'd be calling Brooklyn saying, "Hey, let's do a Ben Simmons for Zach LaVine swap. That way we can get off this contract after this year." They've been talking about trading Lonzo Ball as well as on an expiring contract, so they seem to be in tank mode. But I will ask you this, because we got to move on. I know we stayed on the Kings too long, but if you're Sacramento, does it make more sense to throw your chips in on DeMar DeRozan, or would it have been smarter to go after a guy like Brandon Ingram?
I think if you're looking at everything like this, DeRozan's going to be way cheaper.
True.
Ingram is going to be looking for over a $200 million extension like that. And, I don't know. I think Ingram has his flaws. So does DeRozan. Ingram's definitely younger. So I could see both sides of it, but I could also see that $24 million in the NBA for a guy like DeMar DeRozan, to me, doesn't feel bad. I feel like 2 years from now, I look at that, $24 million. No, that's nothing. We're seeing guys over here get, $35 to $40 million left and right. So I think the cost for Ingram would have been way too much from a from a trade standpoint, and then signing him.
Yeah, you would have definitely had included Herter in that deal.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it makes sense. Let's move on now to the 76ers. We talked about Paul George, Eric Gordon, Andre Drummond. Those were all, pick moves that we thought were smart moves by the 76ers. But of course, they bring back Kelly Oubre on that deal. And then they let Paul Reed go and bring in Caleb Martin from Miami. What were your thoughts on them doing that move?
I think overall the 76ers have had the splashiest offseason of any team. They have spent money left and right. And, last year when they traded James Harden, they didn't get enough back in return to be able to really push this team forward. And I think they didn't panic. They waited for the offseason. So breaking down a few of those moves, Paul George, that was probably an overpay, but I think that they had to do it. There was just, you're looking for how do you get a star here. Paul George was definitely the biggest name that was available because I don't consider that LeBron James was ever available. Then you round out this roster with, Andre Drummond, really good backup for Embiid. I think that's a good move. Eric Gordon on a really cheap deal. He still got it as a good role player. Caleb Martin, the latest for Paul Reed. Paul Reed, good player. Caleb Martin, I think you're going to get more production out of. And I think the deal was actually really good. $32 million for about 4 years. Sounds like there might have been a bad business decision that was made, not accepting the Heat's offer, if that was real, for about $65 million. So that's it's really unfortunate. But also one of the other moves that they did, they locked up Tyrese Maxey long term. I think that was just awesome. So I think, unfortunately, the 76ers will absolutely be back with a vengeance. And if healthy, always their big question, I think they're immediately back in that top 4 seed area where they used to be instead of being in the play-in.
Yeah, I feel like they've got a really solid top 8 right now, and they got guys that know their roles and are going to fit in perfectly. And I think Caleb Martin, this is going to be a true testament of is this a Miami guy that leaves and
Find out.
actually does well, or is he just a product of what the Heat do? So, good contract though, only around $8 million, like you said. I actually really like Caleb Martin. I thought he would have been an interesting fit here for the Pacers. So, like that for them. I think they're going to be able to be big and be long and be able to just kind of go out there and make things interesting for a lot of other teams. But like you said, health is the biggest question mark for them. Definitely going to be a threat to Indiana, and I wonder if it makes Indiana realize, ooh, okay, now we've got to kind of take our bar or take our talent up another level because we can't compete with this team, with our team, but maybe they feel good about their team and just kind of roll out the ball and see what happens. But only thing I do worry about, Paul George wanted to be a Clipper. They didn't want to give him the money. He then wanted to be a Warrior, and the Clippers refused to trade him to Golden State. So he basically only went where the money was at. I don't think that Paul George's heart really wanted to be in Philadelphia. He has to say all that now because he's got the money. But bottom line is, I think that he's probably 85% happy to be in Philadelphia, having to move all the way from the West Coast back to the East Coast. Good chance to win some games basketball-wise, good talent, but at the same time, just kind of have to wonder if that's the team he really wanted to be on.
Paul George will say whatever he's going to say. I mean, everybody's seen the quotes. Every team he goes to, I want to be here long term. I want to bring a championship here, this, and then, he leaves. He went, just like you said, where the money was. And whoever was going to give him that max contract, he was going to sign with. I think that obviously he wanted to be on a team that can compete, not take a max contract from the Detroit Pistons or anything like that. But I think that, this definitely doesn't feel like it was his top choice.
Yeah.
But someone was going to pay him big money. And I think that we're going to learn a lot about this contract a couple years from now because Paul George is, turning 35 years old. And that is, it's a lot of money to pay a 35-year-old. So we'll find out. But for this upcoming season, 76ers are absolutely a better team.
100% Facci. Now let's move to another team that didn't make the splashiest moves, but I think maybe the best moves in terms of completing what they needed to complete in terms of filling the holes that they had. That's the Oklahoma City Thunder. We talked about them going out and getting Alex Caruso, but they also signed Isaiah Hartenstein away from the New York Knicks, got him for a 3-year, $87 million contract. David West, former Pacer, actually brought it to his Instagram account and said, man, it must be good to be an NBA player right now, and posted Hartenstein's stats and just laughing at the amount of money he's getting. Now, that third-year contract, that third year on the contract, I believe is non-guaranteed. So,
Yep, non-guaranteed.
So it's a good move by OKC to only invest really 2 years with Hartenstein. He said he's going to start shooting more threes, but they get Caruso, who is a defensive stopper. Whether he starts or comes off the bench, I don't think it matters. But I think that this team made the right moves to fit their roster, and I think that they are destined to win the Western Conference Finals.
This is a team that was the 1 seed last year. There is no debate about it. They absolutely got better. Hartenstein, this is what I read on him, gave up the fewest points per possession in the paint last year. So that's fantastic. You're getting a really good defensive big man. I think that is probably at the top of their list. Now you're pairing him with, at minimum, an all NBA defensive player, if not all NBA first team. So all NBA second team is what I meant before. All NBA defensive first team in Alex Caruso. That guy is one of the best defenders in the NBA. And I felt like, to be honest, I felt like they might not have even had plans to re-sign Josh Giddey. Apparently they were going to bring him off the bench. So I think they saved money there, at least short term. You bring in Caruso, you don't have to give up a single draft pick for either of those players. And I think that immediately those two players already make this OKC team way better defensively. I still think there are no slouches on the offensive side of things, especially when you're talking about Hartenstein taking more threes moving forward. The talent is already there. They were just a young team last year, and a young team that was the 1 seed in the West. You add these two players, I really feel like OKC continues to just do it right. They what looked like an overpay, like you said, that 30 years non-guaranteed. Essentially, that contract for Hardenstein could be 2 years, $58 million. You could definitely live with that. Caruso, we'll see what they end up paying him. I love the moves that they made.
Yeah, I think it was great. I really don't have anything else to say on OKC, but just really smart basketball decisions and money decisions by Sam Presti. Once again, just does it again, and I think that they're a team that can still make more moves in the future with all the picks they have and all the flexibility they have. So that is interesting to me. Now let's move over to a team that I thought made some upgrades, but I'm kind of curious to see what their team does moving forward. That's the Dallas Mavericks. They do a sign and trade to get Klay Thompson. They get Quentin Grimes from Detroit with Tim Hardaway Jr. going to Detroit. Zeke Naji they bring in from the New Orleans Pelicans. So they let Derek Jones Jr., who was a starter for him, go to the Clippers. Your thoughts on how they kind of retooled around the edges?
So love the moves that they made. Instead of Zeke Naji, I believe it's actually Najee Marshall.
No, sorry. Yes, you're right.
Um,
Zeke Naji's
so
on Denver. I got the wrong Najis there.
so
Najee Marshall.
uh, in terms of their moves, Klay Thompson, look, big upgrade. Klay Thompson, I believe, was second in the NBA in catch and shoot threes, behind only Steph Curry. You're looking at Dallas Mavericks, the amount of looks that Luka's going to get you, or Kyrie, is unreal. And I just think that Klay Thompson is way better of a three-point shooter compared to anything that Dallas had. So you're getting Thompson at a really good rate. This is not max contract Klay Thompson. The number is way closer to that, about $18 million per year. So I love that move for them. Grimes, I think, is just a solid role player that's going to be able to help them out. And then Najee Marshall, what I like about him was I feel like he's the Derek Jones Jr. replacement, but coming as being a better three-point shooter, in my opinion, probably a little bit better of a defender. I think at this point, Dallas is that team that they're already coming off of winning the West and going to the NBA Finals. Does this mean that they're an NBA championship team? I don't know, but it definitely means that on paper, they are a better team than what they were last year. When you look at what they gave up, Tim Hardaway Jr., Derek Jones Jr., you can move on from those guys.
Yeah, I definitely think the Klay Thompson thing is interesting because I feel like Klay has a bit of a chip on his shoulder with the Warriors not willing to give him what he wanted. But I also think that it's pretty telling that an organization that loves this guy was willing to move on from him. And
Yeah,
it's to me, I feel like the Klay Thompson that we know and love is not the same guy.
I agree.
Defensively, last year he had a defensive rating of 117.8. Buddy Hield had a defensive rating of 118.1. So if you put those two in
Never who you
comparison,
want to be compared to on D.
what'd you say?
Never who you want to be compared to on defense.
Well, to me, I know I almost tweeted this, but I didn't want to get raked across the coals for saying this. But I kind of feel like if Dallas was smart, they could have got Buddy Hield on a cheaper contract, and I think he would have fit in just as well as Klay Thompson. I think Klay Thompson's a more sexy name. People are going to talk more about it. He does have more defensive upside. He's a smarter defender. I think he can guard fours a lot better than Buddy Hield. But we saw Klay Thompson when they were playing the Pacers guarding fours because he couldn't guard wings. He wasn't fast enough to stay with them. So he's a guy that, to me, was great, but he missed like 2 seasons in a row with injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And for him to come back from that and be at the level that he once was is just never going to happen. So I think at this point, he's on the downward part of his career. Would have got more money to go to the Lakers and turn that down. So I think that he wanted to play with Luka and Kyrie because of the fit there. So makes a lot of sense catch and shoot wise, but also to just not be a part of the Warrior system anymore and go to a new system. I think we haven't really seen Klay in that environment yet. So I'd be kind of interested to see how he handles a new environment like that. But, I think that What did he ended up making on that contract? Do you remember what it was number wise?
I can pull it up right over here. So I want to say he slid right into Dallas's trade exception that
Okay.
they had. So it was a little over $17 million per year, but I got it right over here. So in terms of year one, it's going to be 15.8 million, year two, 16.6, year three, 17.4. So all in all, it's a 3 year, $50 million contract.
Okay, because
So
Buddy Hield agreed to a $21 million deal and a sign and trade, I believe, with the 76ers, according to the Bleacher Report here. So I feel like Buddy Hield's contract, you get more bang for your buck than you do with Klay Thompson. I think you're like getting twice, you're getting similar to what you said about DeRozan and Paul George. You're not getting twice the amount of what's what I'm thinking of here? Effort. I don't know. You're not getting twice. He's not two times better than Buddy Hield. I mean, Buddy Hield's not a great player. Not saying that at all, but I think the idea of Klay Thompson is better than the actuality of who he is right now.
I
So
agree. I
I
think the
like
one
it.
thing,
I think Dallas made improvements, but I don't think that the sexy move of Klay Thompson really moves the needle to me. Like I think that if they could somehow go out there and get Dorian Finney-Smith in another trade, that to me is more interesting because of what he can do defensively.
yeah, I mean, I think that for Klay, the one difference is when Dallas is trying to win a championship, Klay's someone that has been there and done that.
Sure.
But he definitely has not. So you're kind of hoping that Klay's bringing like that veteran leadership in there that can really, hey, we're all in it together, this type of thing, whatever, make some sacrifices. I think year one, you're going to get a really good Klay, and then you'll probably start to see his numbers kind of tail off just because he is older, but I do think to your point, he will be fired up.
All right. Dejounte Murray to the Pelicans. They still don't have a starting center. Their starting center, Valanciunas, goes to the Washington Wizards. Your thoughts on the Pelicans going after Murray and what they had to trade to get him?
I was surprised. I thought this was a team that was looking to move off of Brandon Ingram. So I thought maybe they were going to be like, okay, hey, smaller market team. You already got a team that's making a lot of players, making a lot of money. They haven't been able to have that playoff success. Seeing them go after Dejounte Murray without moving Brandon Ingram, to me, was a surprise. They punted on Dyson Daniels. Now they gave up some first round picks as well. This is a team that blew a ton of fourth quarter leads. I think that Dejounte Murray definitely makes them a better team. I think that the pairing with Trae Young just was not good. I think that Murray can, run point guard for New Orleans. That could be really good. So to me, it's a surprising move. You once again wonder, what does this mean for the Pelicans? Like, are they going to go on a run to the conference finals? Is winning just a playoff series enough for them? But I don't know. But you look at their starting lineup: Murray, McCollum, Brandon Ingram, Zion. I don't know what they're going to do at center. And then you got Herb Jones, Trey Murphy coming off the bench. So it's a good team. It really
Yeah.
is. But you wonder, like, how good is it in the West?
Yeah, it seems like if they want to trade Brandon Ingram, they could start Herb Jones or Trey
Yes.
Murphy the third, right? So they got that spot filled there on the wing. Brandon Ingram could make some sense somewhere else, but I think a team that everybody kind of looks to for centers right now that's got quite a few is the Portland Trailblazers. They've got DeAndre Ayton on his max contract that he signed a couple of years ago. They've got Robert Williams, who missed the season, right, with an injury last year, and they just drafted Donovan Clingan. So I think that there is some interest there from Portland, maybe, but I just don't know what kind of deal they would have to come together with. It seems more than likely that a DeAndre Ayton trade would be the likely trade just for salary purposes if they wanted to move off of Brandon Ingram. I'm trying to think of other centers that could be out there. This doesn't seem like there's a lot that make a lot of sense fitting next to Zion. I think Miles Turner is the perfect fit next to that team because of what Zion is able to do. But I don't think Indiana has any interest in doing a three-team deal where they would be taking back Ayton at this point, although they had interest in him a few years ago. Um, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think they're an interesting team. The Pelicans are with what they can do. The Hawks, I actually like Dyson Daniels in that system a little bit more. I think that he could be something special. They got a first round pick from that deal as well. Not really sure why they only were able to get Larry Nance back for Dejounte Murray with a first round pick and Dyson Daniels, but I believe in Dyson Daniels as a good defensive player, and I think under Quinn Snyder he'll reach those high highs. But other than that, I'm trying to think of any other teams around the league. We already talked before on this podcast about KCP going to Orlando and obviously the Knicks moves, and we really like both those. So, any other teams that you thought made some interesting moves that you liked?
No, I think those were the teams that got better or made some splashes to get better. There was also quite a few teams that really didn't make moves. So I think if we want to, run through some of those teams, kind of starting with the Phoenix Suns. This is a team that you look at that window feels like it's this year. I honestly feel like if they don't have a lot of success, go to at least a conference finals, they're going to try and break up that roster. I feel like their big move was bringing Mike Budenholzer. I feel like now you got a new head coach, and that's kind of just about it. You brought back Bol, Damian Lee, Royce O'Neal. So you're running it back. You look at you added Monty Morris, Mason Plumlee. Okay, I don't think that's going to move the needle. And then you drafted Ryan Dunn and Oso Ighodaro in the draft. I thought those were good picks. What do they really contribute year one? I don't really know, but for a Suns team that has three max players, I don't think they did enough to get better.
Don't forget, former Pacers guard Isaiah Wong has joined their summer league roster as well, Facci.
That's
So,
true.
so the Phoenix Suns, man, they love their Indiana Pacers. I'll tell you that much. But with that being said, yeah, I think that they're in a weird spot. Kevin Durant on Sunday was reported that he strained his calf during practice for Team USA. Kind of wonder how much rubber he's got left on the tires there, Facci. I kind of wonder because I like Kevin Durant, but at this point in his career, he's getting a little bit older. He has proven, maybe not to be the most reliable guy. So we'll see what happens. I know there's been some talks about maybe Devin Booker could eventually want out of Phoenix because of how chaotic this whole situation's been. And I know somebody threw out the idea on Twitter. It wasn't a Pacer fan. It was actually a non-Pacer or Suns fan that said Devin Booker in Indiana makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, I think it does make a lot of sense, but we're not going to talk about that today. So, yeah, but just kind of going through these quickly, Facci, because I know we have to wrap things up here. You've got the Milwaukee Bucks. They've been criticized for not making any big moves. I know Kendrick Perkins kind of went on them and kind of went, in on them saying they should have made more moves, but what moves were they really going to make? The Lakers have made no moves. I'm kind of shocked at
Bad.
this,
It's
I
bad.
know they're talked about a lot, but like they just seem like a team that if they run it back, like that is not a good team.
They are striking out left and right. I mean, their offseason, I think it's been horrific. Their big move right now has been drafting Dalton Connect in the draft. And then
No.
you
Bronny James.
Ryan James. I mean, look at who they struck out on. Dan Hurley. You went, into
Did they really?
I don't know. I mean, they kind of cheaped out a little bit. It sounded like it was going to be like $100 million deal. It
I think it was all
turned into
fake.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how real it was or not. I know they met. Anyway, you don't get Dan Hurley. All right. You bring in JJ Redick. We'll see what happens there. You strike out on Clay. You strike out on DeMar DeRozan. They even had rumors to bring in Valanciunas. They didn't get him. He signed for $10 million a year.
He went to
Washington.
the Wizards over them,
Yeah,
okay?
exactly. So it's like, whoa, no one really wants to play for the Lakers right now, which is pretty surprising. The other surprising move, they gave Max Christie 4 years, $32 million. I did not know they had faith in him like that
No.
because I don't know what they've seen behind closed doors, but to give him $8 million in a very pivotal offseason where you really didn't have money like that to go around, to me was very surprising.
Yeah. I will say this. The Lakers seem to be kind of not willing to part with a lot of picks to make a lot of stuff happen. So I wonder if JJ Redick's going to come in there and said, you know what? Let's not do this the old Laker way and just go out and get, 25 cents on the dollar deals done so we can have a good season for LeBron. Let's just do what we can do and hopefully something will become available to us that makes sense. But, I'm kind of been disappointed with them. And then I will say the Nuggets are a team that they've lost Bruce Brown, now KCP. They're in a weird spot. I think that they believe in Christian Brown. They're going to promote him up to the starting shooting guard spot. There's been talks about wanting to get Russell Westbrook from the Clippers, and that Jokic would be very intrigued to play with him. So I think the Nuggets are still going to be really good as long as Jokic and Murray are on that team together. Aaron Gordon's a big part of that team, and so is Michael Porter Jr. But I think MPJ, just the money they gave him, kind of puts them in a weird spot. And I like him, but I just, we talk about on the last episode, like Mikal Bridges versus Larry Markkinen as your number three. Their number three is Aaron Gordon, and their number four is Michael Porter Jr., and they're paying him a crap load of money. They were comfortable doing it, but I think if I were Denver, I'd probably rather have a KCP or a Bruce Brown than at the contracts they got versus what I'm paying Michael Porter Jr.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Michael Porter Jr. this year is going to make $36 million. Then it's 38. Then it's 40. So I mean, there's still three years left on that deal. You're looking at a team that no one expected to win a championship, before it happened, and they're that small market team that I feel like has stretched themselves too thin now. And now they're looking at it. Your big move was they just signed Dario Saric. That's it. That's the move. And you're watching your players, sign elsewhere. Good players that really help this team out defensively and win that championship. And I think now at this point, if they can get Russell Westbrook on a $4 million deal, that's what he's getting paid this year. That would be a win. That would be a win for them. And I think that right now, this is Jokic's prime. You still have to dish out a max extension to Jamal Murray. So things are not getting easier. I don't know how they're going to be able to, trade Michael Porter Jr., but it feels like that's kind of the key to everything. And I don't think that's going to happen this year.
I don't see it either, Facci. It's going to take some time. A few teams otherwise that I just want to mention, not really going too much into detail on them, but Cavaliers, they're pretty much running it back with their squad. And then Miami, they're running it back. And I honestly will say this. DeRozan was rumored to have interest, I guess, in Miami as well as Milwaukee potentially and Sacramento. I think that he made a mistake by not going to Miami. I think that if Miami were able to somehow get DeMar DeRozan with Jimmy Butler, Terry Rozier, and Bam Adebayo, that could have been a team that makes it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I know people are like, why does that make sense? But I'm just telling you, Eric Spoelstra with those four, I think they could do a lot of damage in the Eastern Conference. And then you got Jaime Jaquez Jr. as well. You might have to give away Tyler Hero in a sign and trade to make that deal happen. But I think that for that group they have now, that would make a lot of sense to me.
I completely agree. I think that DeRozan would have been a better fit with Miami than he is in Sacramento. He might get more touches in Sacramento, but it doesn't mean that he's a better fit there. So yeah, I definitely think when you look at Miami, to me, it feels like that window's closing as well. I've heard that, we've heard the rumblings of Jimmy Butler being unhappy. I've heard that he doesn't want to sign an extension yet because he wants to prove himself and then be able to cash in on a bigger deal and have other suitors, because there is a little bit of that. Does Miami want to, sign him at his age now to, a max contract? So they have some problems. They lost Caleb Martin. They drafted Khalil Ware. I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right. The guy who was
Khalil Ware.
Oregon before that. He looks good so far in summer league. You can't go off that though. And I think that right now you added Alec Burks. That's their offseason. Alec Burks. That's a guy that, while has had moments, wasn't even getting off the bench for the Knicks in the playoffs in the beginning. So I think that the Miami Heat, that is always that, don't sleep on Miami. They have to make a move if you want to keep this team together long term. And I think that the Miami Heat of a couple of years ago is not the same Miami Heat that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, I think everything's just really fascinating to kind of see how people are approaching the first apron, second apron thing, and how they're trying to avoid those aprons and kind of being the tax, but not at the, but not get to the first apron. And Indiana's like right there on the cusp of being a tax paying team. So I think all these moves are fascinating. You're seeing maybe some contracts, Facci, that you thought guys might get bigger deals. The money just isn't there. And so that's why restricted free agency, maybe, you talked about it will be top, and could they have waited a little bit, maybe got them for cheaper because there wasn't other contracts out there. You don't really want to make your player unhappy by not giving them the money that you think they're worth, but with the way the new CBA is and how people are approaching it, it does kind of make sense maybe to wait a little bit with these teams. So it'll be interesting to see. There's a lot of teams I still think could make some moves. I mean, maybe nothing drastic right now, but the Lauri Markkanen piece that we talked about on last episode, that could be interesting to see if he's dealt somewhere. Brandon Ingram's still a name that could be dealt. Zach LaVine, Kyle Kuzma, there's still players out there that could be moved and could help a team get better. But I just don't see any drastic moves happening that's going to take a team from, middle of the pack to championship level happening like we saw last year, potentially with, a Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday type of move that happened back like August, right before the season started.
Yeah, I really just don't think there's that disgruntled star out there right now that is forcing a move. Last year, in addition to Dame and Drew Holiday, there was also James Harden, who you felt like, when was that going to play out? Anything like that. It just doesn't seem like there's that player right now. But going back to your point before, with this new model, the first and second apron, I definitely feel like teams are being a lot more cautious, saying, "Oh, you know what? Let's just hold pat for now." There's not this, signing all these crazy contracts and we'll worry about it later. it's like teams are starting to realize like, oh wow, yeah, you know what? Hey, we don't have, because something that we haven't talked about before is, picks being frozen if you're in the second apron for too long. Having your draft pick slide to the end of the first round if you are a repeat second apron team for too long. These type of consequences have never been there before in league history, and I think the league is trying to figure this out short term before they can make long-term decisions.
I feel like there will be adjustments made to this moving forward because it just feels a little bit over the top. But with that being said, Facci, that's pretty much going to wrap up our conversation for the day. You're going to be gone maybe for the next episode or two, so I'm going to take care of putting out episodes for you guys. Kevin Bowen will be joining us on this podcast later this week, so hopefully you guys look forward to that. But Facci, everybody knows where to find us. Instagram and Twitter at PacersPodSTP. I'm at Alex Golden NBA on Twitter and Instagram. You're at _FACCI on both Instagram and Twitter. And we're also at Setting the Pace on Facebook and TikTok. So make sure you guys are there. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star rating and review on the audio platforms. And Facci, if you're glad that the Pacers have a really good team that can do a lot of different moves moving forward, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers!